So let's do an overview of the staff meeting. So remember, the staff meeting is absolutely the single most important business function, period. And I'll just share with you one of the questions I ask new clients is I say, do you do staff meetings? There's a few things that are telltale signs on whether the doctor's, to be honest with you, knows what he's doing or not. And there's no way you can achieve your statistics. I don't know of anybody that does well in practice, achieves what they want to achieve without doing staff meetings. I don't know of anybody in 30 plus years. That says something. In other words, things do not happen by accident. Success is not an accident. So these staff meetings are important. Why? It determines where you are and where you're going. There's so many topics we cover, and it puts you in the direction of where we're going, and it keeps everybody on the same page. That is so important. Everybody's got to be on the same page, knowing what you're doing, where you're going, it's got to be a team. Now, when do you want to do staff meetings? Well, first, let's go into when do you not want to do them? You do not want to do them on Monday. You're coming back, everybody's settling in, don't do them on Monday. You don't want to do them at the end of the week because it's the end of the week. You don't want to do them on a Thursday or Friday. It's the end of the week. Especially Friday, everybody's checked out. And then you don't want to do them on Wednesday because Wednesday typically is your busiest day. Remember, when you're seeing people 3 times a week, twice a week, or once a week, Wednesday will be the day that all of those fall on. So Wednesday should always be your busiest day. That's why you don't want to do them on Wednesday. And then the best time to do them is Tuesday from 11 to 12. So that's typically what we do. Now, when you get to be pretty good at it and everybody's really well trained, you can go through it pretty quickly. And it might take 40 minutes, something like that, but and you want to do it consistently. In other words, all your staff members know this is exactly what it's going to happen at this time every week. Be there and be ready. And then what happens is the staff members get trained on knowing what they need to bring to the meeting. And it does take, I always say it can take up to 3 months before you have a really clean staff meeting. In other words, everybody knows what their role is and what they need to bring because that's what you're going to cover. So it will take, when you first start doing it, matter of fact, you could put aside 2 hours when you first start doing them, and you won't even get through them because so much information you're not doing or haven't done, and so everybody's just got to get used to doing it to where you get it down to an hour. Now, an hour is a really good time frame because you not only can cover the statistics, you can do the training, you can do the marketing. So when everybody's kind of well trained in how this works, it will and should last about an hour because that will include multiple topics. And then you always want to do it in your office, never do a staff meeting at lunch. You won't get anything done. And you want to do it in your office because that's where the files are. So typically the place to do it is where you have access to the computer or the files. So a lot of times we would do our staff meeting right there in the, right there at inside the reception desk right there, because that's where the files were, the computers were. If we needed to get something quickly, we're right there, okay? So it depends on how big that room is. You may have to do it in your waiting room. You may have to do it in your therapy bay, whatever. But, and then who attends? All full-time employees are required to attend. All full-time employees. Now, you don't need part-time people to attend. They do miscellaneous things, so they don't need to attend. But full-time people definitely need to understand what's going on, how it's going on, where it's going on, everything. And then what happens is the staff members start understanding what their responsibilities and roles are. And there's many things that happen with this. One of the things is it creates a lot of personal responsibility because now they know what they're responsible for, and you're going to check it every week. And this is how you do management by statistics and leverage time and get a lot done. People say to me all the time, they say, how? They go, I have a hard enough time running one office. How did you open 77 offices? And how did you help run them? It's called management by statistics. I was never even at those offices. I was only there twice to sign the lease. And then the month after, I would go there just to go through all the systems with the doctor to make sure that all the systems were being done right. That's it. Never went back to the office again. So they would fax over all their statistics, and then I would know what's going on just by interpreting the statistics. So who attends? All full-time employees. So these are some of the basics right off the block that we want to pay a lot of attention to. And then what are we going to do? We're going to pay attention to the statistics. There's some statistics we're going to definitely pay attention to. And unfortunately, doctors typically don't like doing statistics. And I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of doctors get in bad shape because they start trusting like their insurance staff or, who's doing the money. And then that person quits or gets pissed or whatever. I can't tell you how many doctors have been left high and dry because they didn't do staff meetings. They did not look at statistics. And then that staff member left and there was no cross training. And that's the worst thing you could do. And that's what I'd even suggest to say 90% of the doctors are doing. No cross training. The doctor just kind of takes his head out of the game with statistics, the billing and accounts receivable and all that. And then next thing you know, that person quits and the doctor doesn't even know what's going on, doesn't even know where to go. Or, now the cash flow starts getting decreased and decreased because they didn't pay attention to the system that the staff member wasn't doing X, Y, or Z to get those collections to come in. And the doctor never knew it because he never did a staff meeting and he never evaluated the statistic. And that's how you will get in trouble. But it's also how you will focus and grow your business. You'll look at your statistics, you'll look at your weak statistics, and then that's where you'll focus to build those statistics up. And you won't even know where to focus if you're not even keeping statistics or if you don't know how to interpret them. So the business statistics are unbelievably important. Accounts receivable. We're going to pay a lot of attention to the accounts receivable, 30, 60, 90 day for every patient. Prepay percentage. We already know patients are going to leave. You don't do prepays, patients are going to leave early. We already know that. And that's, by the way, that's usually one of the places doctors stop doing when they get comfortable. They stop doing prepays. And of course, then now the office starts going down. And then we'll look at personal statistics, and all of these are going to be specific. And there's always a training component, always, because we're always going to a state of homeostasis. We're always getting weaker. That's what's happening. Now, when you go into the training, we go into specific areas of training and what you train, et cetera. In other words, there's core things that everybody has to learn how to do relative to running the practice. So every team member should know how to answer the phone, schedule appointments, just all the basic components, how to move patients through day 1, 2, 3, 4, how to do therapy. Every staff member should know all the basics. Everybody's cross-trained. And then we'll pay attention specifically to certain things. And after you've already put all those systems in place, you'll look at the weaknesses. When you do the statistics, you'll look at the weaknesses because that'll tell you where the training needs to go, whether it's in accounts receivable or marketing or whatever it is. So the statistics will tell you where to train. Common questions and responses throughout the office. We always will have that. And one management tool that you do is you have your staff members. If you let your staff members, they'll just constantly stop you 24/7, not thinking a thing about it. And the doctor lets them. And you're just wasting a lot of time and energy. I remember one time I asked the doctor, I said, "You do staff meetings?" He goes, "No, I don't need to. I'm at the counter all the time." I call that management by counter management. I'm like, boy, we got a real piece of work here. He thinks he can actually manage a business by yelling at his staff members at the counter. And you know what I'm talking about. Chiropractors do this all the time. They don't do staff meetings, they don't do systems, and it's constantly putting out fires. It just wears you out. That's what happens when you don't have systems, and you don't do meetings, and you don't do training. It just wears you out. And then they're constantly stopping you. What about this, doctor? Well, what about this? Or what should we do here? What should it, they'll come to your office. They'll stop you in the hall. You can't do that. You can't run a business like that. That's just chaos. So my staff was not allowed to do that. The only time they were allowed to stop me in the hall is if it was an emergency. In other words, a patient was going to quit. Okay? Otherwise, they were to write down whatever the problem was on a legal pad, not interrupt me anytime they wanted to. They were to write down the problem. And then the next thing they were to do is to offer 2 solutions to that problem. You want to eliminate 80% of your problems? Do that. And when they write down the solution, more often than not, we'll pick one of those solutions. They're right with one of those solutions. In other words, you'll get them thinking on their own and start being responsible for what they're doing instead of just going brain dead and then interrupting you all the time. So this is a tremendous way to management. And so you have them take a legal pad, a legal pad, and just keep it by their desk and say, whatever questions you have, you write it down. And then you bring those to the staff meeting. You're not to just interrupt me whenever you want throughout the day. Unless it's an emergency, and I defined emergency. Is a patient going to quit? That's an emergency. You better interrupt me. Okay. So now you get control fast, eliminate a lot of your problems, do what I just told you. Common questions and responses through the office, patient treatment schedules. 3 things that you're always going to go over every staff meeting that are of the utmost importance with every active patient. You're going to go, what on treatment schedule? If not, why? And remember, you're looking for breaks in the system. Did something happen because there's not a system in place? Or did it happen because the person did not do the system, or they were not trained on the system, or they're bad at the system? You got to find that out. Because if there's no system in place, it's just going to keep happening again and again and again. So you have to, when you have these problems, you got to do a breakdown analysis and go. And you got to go from contact point to see what was done and when it was done and where it was done. And what you're doing is you're looking for the problem. And then when you find that contact point, then you just go again, was there a system in place or not? Does the system need to be modified? Did the person even do it? You'd be surprised how many times the staff member didn't even do it. And you go, okay, we got a problem here. Well, now it might not be the system, it's the staff member. They just didn't do it. And I'll just share with you, a lot of times they won't do this. They typically won't do what the doctor will not check. I'll just tell you that. Whatever you don't check, you can be guaranteed that's what your staff members stop doing because they know it's not getting checked. You want a statistic to come up, pay attention to it. Hold accountability to it, train it, let them know it's going to be looked at every week. That stat's coming up. Okay, so we're going to look at patient treatment schedules. Is the patient on treatment? If not, why? And I already talked about the breakdown analysis. Next, we're going to look at their copays. Are they up to date with their copays? If not, why? And we're doing the same thing. Was there a system in place? Was it trained? Was it not done? Was it done bad? That's what we're looking for every time we do these. Because we got to put the system in place to stop that from happening. And then you're always going to look at the 30, 60, 90 days of that active patient. Where's the accounts receivable? Always obviously start with 90, then go into 60. And the same thing, you'll start finding systems. Now, when you start doing this, you're going to find a lot of problems. And the great news is you're going to solve a lot of problems. So 3 months down the road, definitely 6 months down the road, you got a well-oiled machine. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's trained in what they're doing. You're not looking over people's shoulders, and it's getting done. They come to the staff meeting. They know exactly the statistics you're going to cover, and they just tell you what they are before you even have to ask. That's the way you want your staff meeting to ultimately go. And that's why you cover the same topics in the same order, and the people know what they're responsible for to bring to the meeting. So when I got to the meeting and when we did patient, okay, and I said, okay, now we're going to cover the active patient treatment schedules. They knew what that meant. And the person in charge of that knew the report to give. She knew to go to alphabetically the active patients, are they on schedule or not. She knew that. And let me tell you, you want to increase their responsibility to what they're doing, go ahead and look at that stat. They'll start making the recalls for the people that are missing. They'll try harder with the recaptures. They won't just let stuff go anymore because they know you're going to look at it. Same, in other words, they knew every time we went to this quarter, they knew we were going to look at patient visits first. And then with that patient, are they on their treatment schedule? Fine. Then I go, then they knew immediately the person that was dealing with accounts receivable. He knew immediately we were going to ask about that person's copay. Was it up to date or not? And then immediately we were going to go into this 90, 60, 30 days with that patient. Where are they at? In other words, the people responsible for knew that. They just knew that was going to happen when we got to that topic. And they just knew. Boom, 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 boom. See, that's the way it should ultimately get. And you will start controlling your office instead of your office controlling you, or you not even knowing what's going on, or all these things your staff members aren't doing. And, and a lot of times it's not staff members trying to, it's not counterintuitive, and, they're not trying to counter you. It's just human nature to let stuff go when it's not being checked. Most of the time there's no ill will. It's just not being checked and they're just doing other things. And so they don't do it. It's just that simple. So anyway, and then one component is conviction training. Remember, it's not just about that check. If you think that job for that CA is about that check, you're going to be going through a lot of employees. So you have to make it bigger than that check. And that's what that conviction training, there should always be one component of conviction, always. And that's, by the way, the conviction is like a patient story. Especially what I always like to do is when a staff member brought a patient in and that patient did better. That was my conviction training for that staff meeting, is I'm going to go over how that patient was doing and how much better they're doing and thank that staff member for referring them in. That gives them a lot of personal satisfaction when they send somebody in and then they see how much better they're doing. And by the way, they get bonuses. We bonus our staff. We teach them how to get referrals and we bonus them for getting referrals. The money's one part. But the personal satisfaction of them helping somebody is tremendous. That's called conviction. So remember, the lowest form of doing something is money. Personal gain is next. Conviction is second. Self-actualization is third, is the highest. So you always want your practice and your focus to be on conviction. Like if you're only talking money, this happens a lot this is why a lot of staff members think the doctor's only about the money. When you're self-employed, you got to pay attention to that. Right? You got to pay attention to what your accounts receivable is, and your billing, your overhead. And so a lot of times doctors, they forget that that's all they talk about. So the staff thinks that the doctor's only about money. Well, guess what kind of productivity you're going to get out of your staff? Guess how much they're going to care about referring their family members to you when they think you're only about the money? You're not going to get much. So you always have to take it to a higher level. That's called conviction. Sure, we're going to cover the money part, but don't let it stop there. Don't let them think this is just about the money. Always cover a conviction part. Have somebody take a patient and do a real simple case analysis. Patient came in with this, they had this. Show them an x-ray. Explain, and again, your staff should know the basics of all the tests you do, what it means. They should know all the therapeutics you do, why you do them. They should know the 3 phases of healing. They should all know this. That's conviction. And then marketing is a huge one. You're going to always cover 3 things in marketing. You're going to cover the past marketing, what went good and what went bad. What could we have done better? That's always what you're going to do. So let's say you did a patient appreciation day last month. Okay, how well we do, what were the statistics? And then I always go, I'm going to go, was there a statistic that obviously we need to get better at? And we'll work on that. And then we'll go, okay, what did we do well? I'll go, what went well? And I'll go, what's the number one thing that went well? It's the number one thing we can work on. Always do that every time you do a marketing event, and you will constantly get better and better and better. You always ask, what's the one thing that went really well? So you can do it more and reinforce it, and you're not just beating your staff all the time with negativity. And then what's the one thing you could have done better? And it may include some training. It may include some conviction training. And then what's going on now? So I'm going to cover the marketing that's happening now, whatever that is. If it's pay-per-click, if it's patient day, if it's kids day, if it's the personal injury attorney referral system, whatever it is. We're going to always cover what's happening right now. And then we're going to cover what's going to happen next month, what's coming up. Because sometimes you have to get ready for stuff. You know, sometimes it takes a little time to get ready for something, the next event. So in marketing, you're always going to cover what past, present, and future. So everybody, and you may have to do some training on the marketing. That might be a training for that week or 2 or 3 weeks. All right, let's train for the next 3 weeks on the patient appreciation day. See, that's what, and then you go through the flow chart. Okay, this is everything that happens, how it happens. Let's go into the dialogue, how we're going to talk to patients, and let's do some role playing. Okay, that's how it works. And then you always want to have office or personal issues. This is when, you always have them write down. If there's any issues, this is the time to bring it up. If it's personal, they won't bring it up in a group setting, and that's fine. And just say, if there's a personal issue you don't want to bring up in a group setting, that's fine. Just let me know, and we'll talk privately about it. Okay? But I'm telling you, when you cover these 10 statistics and you know how to interpret them and look at them, and you know how to look at systems, this is how you create a machine. This is how I did $60 million a year. This was the flow chart that I evaluated for every office. This is exactly what I did in my office every week. Tuesday at 11 o'clock to 12. In other words, everybody was on the same page. Everybody knew what to do. It was a team. We were looking for the weaknesses, the strengths and weaknesses. What were we doing with service that we could have done better? Everything. We started, and this is how you clear out a lot of problems. This is how you put systems in place. This is how you stop problems from happening. More importantly, this is how you take your office and you point it in the direction you want it to go, whether it's production, whether it's a certain category of business you want to go into, more disc patients, more, lifestyle patients, whatever it is. This is where this is the rudder of the ship right here. This is everything. Make sure you know how to do this. And of course, we have the videos of how to do all of these in great detail. It will take a lot more time in the beginning. So that's why I say you may want to allot 2 hours in the beginning just to get people to know what, you're going to be looking at, how you're going to be looking at, how to get through it. It's going to take a little bit to get from that conscious, to that conscious incompetence phase to the conscious competence to the unconscious competence, because that's what's happening. You need to get to where you're running this staff meeting and you know what to do and they know what to do at what's called an unconscious competent level. Everybody just comes together and everybody knows what they're doing and how to run through everything, and it just clicks. That's ultimately where you want to get. And when most doctors start, they're at unconscious incompetence. They don't even know how to do this and they've never done it before. So yes, it's going to take a lot longer. And I always say it takes about 3 months to where you can get this down to about an hour. And then it typically takes another 3 months to where it gets to that unconscious competence level with all the staff. Everybody knows what you're going to cover, how you're going to cover it, and what's going to happen. And that's when you have a well-oiled machine and you're taking your business where you want it to go.